G'day folks, Ziggy here. I usually like to make a guide for the new League mechanic whenever it comes out, but this one's relatively straightforward, so there'll be a few things that I've learned and discovered here, but mostly this will be maybe some ranting and thoughts on the new Affliction League and how the Wildwood works and whatnot. So the basic premise is that you enter this Wildwood zone, and it's, imagine just a giant forest map, except you're restricted to visibility in this ring here, and areas you've previously explored by consuming that ring by moving around. So effectively to reveal away some of the darkness, to burn it away like this, you expend some energy. There's no way of seeing this currently, and I think that's by design, but it would be cool to have a bar or something, or maybe it'd be a bit more visually obvious. I suspect that this shrinks a little bit, but it's kind of hard to tell. There's definitely some visibility issues here, and I mean that's thematic, I suppose. It is a dark, afflicted, it's kind of spooky woods. But that's the general idea. And then the objective is to find these trails of wisps, of which there are 3 colors, purple, yellow, and blue, and follow them to an encounter. As you travel over them, you'll collect them, and they're kind of like a currency. So you can see I've collected 19 wild wisps here. If you mouse over each of them, it'll actually tell you what they do later on when you release them. So this one adds item rarity to monsters. So any wild empowered monsters gain item rarity, and then there's item quantity and added currency as well. So imagine again that forest map. There's a bunch of encounters on it, so there might be one over here in the darkness, or more likely because there's a path somewhere down this way. And they're all pre-placed, and then there are these wisp trails pre-placed and pre-generated on the map that lead in a somewhat swirling fashion to those encounters. So if we follow this path, this purple path here is going left and right like this, but it's actually pre-placed. It's not like a quest marker gesturing you forwards to an encounter. As such, that means you can end up going the wrong way. The idea to tell if that's the case is if the path is getting thinner. So right now we're kind of somewhere in the middle of the path based on the thickness of this. If it gets brighter and more thick with wisps, then you're going the right way. But if it kind of fizzles out and becomes thinner and thinner, then you're kind of going the wrong way, and you'll probably just fizzle out into nothingness, or you'll randomly stumble upon something else instead. To add to the confusion, some of the encounters themselves, it looks like we're probably going the right way here to an encounter. Some of the encounters themselves have kind of wisps going around them in some capacity. So this was an NPC encounter, right? So this is one of the NPCs. This path might well travel sometimes around like this, and it kind of looks like it does, and loop around, which means you can kind of lose that trail there. So just be aware of that sometimes the wisps surround that, and that's I guess a way of collecting extra of the currency. So of the different encounter types, there are 3 NPCs. Actually, there's 4 NPCs. I haven't found the 4th one yet, but there's a rarer NPC that sells you uniques. So keep an eye out for them, because they're apparently a little bit hard to spot. And you want to clear the area of monsters before you talk to them. And this is kind of an ongoing issue in Path of Exile, and it's especially enraging near this league, where if you go to talk to the NPCs and listen to their lore or trade with them or whatnot, especially for this new unique vendor, then monsters can come out of the darkness and interrupt you. GGG, please just make us immune or freeze time when we talk to NPCs. Just explain it with some magic or something, right? It's not a big deal. And if some players abuse it a little bit to I don't know, save their character, who cares really, right? It's just so painful when you're talking to these guys and listening to their various laws, of which I haven't done because it's too annoying getting interrupted by monsters. Just give us a bubble, man. Make an immune bubble, or when we're actively talking to them, when this screen's open, or especially when this screen is open, just make us non-targetable, right? Come on. Anyway, rant over. Apart from that, there are a bunch of encounters. There's one encounter for each type of color. So for each of the different type of wisps, that is some sort of chest. So there's jewelry, weapons, and armor, but there's also some other ones that are a bit rarer, like currency and gems and things like that. I'll explain this in a second. And then apart from that, there are some randomly wandering unique monsters, which tend to drop things like charms and tinctures. There's an unfortunate kind of gap where any of the bosses associated with Breaker of Oaths drop nothing. They drop white items. And that's because what this guy sells, and each of them sell something, is corpses. And they can't drop corpses for you, so it just drops nothing. But the other ones drop their charms and tinctures, which are the items that the other NPCs sell, and they're associated with the different classes for them. But the other mechanic here is these white orbs, and It's kind of hard to tell what these do, but as best as I can tell, there's two types of this. One of them explodes and reveals an area, and the other one, I think, refuels your kind of wisp, or your, like, clearing charge here, so that you can go a little further. I've had runs where I end up exploring a lot of the Wildwood, and I suspect that's ones where I've stepped on a few of these. Now, it looks like I think this is an exploding variant, so it just reveals a small-ish area for free, effectively. But then I think the other one refuels you a little bit, effectively. Also, like, these guys are really tanky, right? These cultist witches, they're so tanky. They're so ludicrously tanky. In fact, the purple mobs in general so far seem like some of the most dangerous and tanky. There's like white mobs that shoot a bunch of purple flowers, Scourge Arrow style, and they are very deadly for white mobs. So kind of a problem with the path design of this is that you can find one of these paths in the middle and then just go the wrong way. It's kind of weird that GGD didn't design this like a quest thing where there's like a wisp that's sitting there gesturing you forwards towards the encounter. Imagine if when you spawn in, there's like a wisp here, here, and here, and they're like quite faint, but they're kind of like being like, this way, hey, listen. And you follow it, and it like positions between you and the encounter, so it leads you to it, and it gets brighter and brighter as you get closer to the encounter. That would have been so much better. I get the idea is for us to kind of be lost and stumbling around in the woods here, but I've had plenty of Wildwood runs where you just run around into the darkness blindly and don't even find the paths, or you find a path and go the wrong way, and then you just leave. I literally had one where I didn't even encounter any monsters, and then I just got booted out. So, like this case here, like I just followed the path the wrong way, right? And it just fizzled. And so that was just like the end of a path. Like the beginnings of the path are off in the map somewhere. Kind of a weird design. But once you know that, you at least can somewhat play around with it. So if you're following a path and it's going in the direction where it looks like it's getting thinner and thinner, then you're probably going the wrong way. So like this one probably doesn't lead to anything. It looks like there's a thicker path in this direction, so it might have ended up going somewhere. Yeah, another thing to note is if you're looking for your NPCs for your quests, because each of the NPCs have quests in order to gain points for the ascendancies, I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. It is actually quite easy to reset zones, like for example, Desecrated Chambers. Even if you're in maps, you can reset this to get like, let's say you haven't got your 6th point yet. I got it around Act 8, so it's not too hard to potentially get it by then, but you can just reset a zone for a little while, and they spawn always near the entrance, so it is quite easy to go get them. So when you first encounter one of the NPCs, they'll give you the first 2 points, or they'll let you choose their ascendancy and give you the first 2 points to spend. And then after that point, you'll pretty much immediately gain access to the next quest, which I think for each of them is, well, no, it's a little different, but it's generally like kill a bunch of monsters. So like one of them was, this one for the Magi was to kill a bunch of treants that were empowered with wisps and collect those wisps. And it's really hard to say wisps, by the way. I hate that name. The Warlock one, the purple one, was to kill like a bunch of cultists. So that one can take just a little while to do. I think it took maybe another 2 acts to get. So you first encounter the NPCs in Act 2, by the way, so don't panic if you're like just starting your character. It's actually, I actually just recommend skipping the League mechanic entirely in Act 1. It doesn't really offer much in Act 1 at all, and you can't get the NPCs or the points. So it's definitely a mechanic to skip at least until Act 2, but I do highly recommend getting in Act 2 and following the gold path, I believe it is, which leads to the Magi. When you encounter the Magi class, this is the one that's good for literally every build. Like you might have one that you want to go for your build, but you can very easily swap later. And this node here, Oath of the Magi, is insane value for leveling. It's like how every character in this league has a extremely well-rolled gold ram and a pair of like seven league steps, kind of. Like, it's insanely good. Basically, with this one, if you don't have your helmet socketed, you get 50% all res. So that's just like your resistances capped pretty much for most of the league. For like most of the leveling process and end in game. I'm still using it now to make my gearing cheap at level 80. I'll drop it soon, but you know, cheap gear, nice. And then for the boots, it's 30% increased movement speed if you have no socketed gems. It's super easy to do. Just socket stuff in your like body armor and weapons. You can even go the gloves for extra life, but at a certain point you'll need a few more gem slots, so the gloves kind of the first to go potentially there. So super good value there. You can just take that. You can like level, get some extra points, maybe equip a tincture or something. You do like the next quest for this, and then later just swap to the extra ascendancy that you want. In terms of swapping, all of the bosses that you kill seem to count for quest progress, so you'll kind of like automatically have that done. And I think any quests that you fully finish for each class mean that if you swap to another ascendancy and then swap back, they'll still be completed. But quests that are partially done, I think you have to redo. Like you can't keep progressing them after you swap. For example, I had the Warlock one and I was like halfway done, and then I swapped to the Magi and that quest disappeared. So I don't think I can get that back and start that again until I swap back, I believe. Oh, hey, cool news. I got some GG devs reaching out to me on Discord asking for some feedback, so I'll send them some of that and some of what I've talked about in this video too. The good news is that one of my biggest complaints was that the tuning and the balancing for monsters and the empowering mechanic, so the wisps enhancing monsters, seemed way overtuned to me. I died 35 times to Brutus on a single empowerment. He was like 10 times harder, so there's definitely some like out of whack. This is an example where you just like jump in and there's no paths to follow as well. Kind of an issue, I might bring that up. But yeah, the empowerment balance was really iffy. But the good news was they've already nerfed them twice. They made them do less damage, made them less fast, and gave them like 20-30% less health. So good stuff all around. I think maybe they're still a little bit out of whack for leveling, and on certain monsters, like when they spawn on like a stacked rare or an essence monster or something like that, but that's not particularly unusual. But the good news is they seem to be responding to feedback really well, and literally reaching out to people asking for feedback right now on Discord's a really good sign. So props to them for that. I look forward to typing out a list of feedback for them. It looks like I might have a new quest available or something. What's this?
Been loath to assign you this most deadly task,
the King of the Mists.
but now
This is
I
my
know
next
that
one.
you are
Great. So this is the final quest for the 7th and 8th point to kill the King in the Mists. And interesting note is I gained access to this in the Desecrated Chamber here just while I was recording this video. This is a little different to how these things usually work, but the trigger for the quests for your Ascendancy seems to be character level. Level 80, I believe, is when you gain access to that 7th and 8th point quest. So now my objective is to track down the gold wisps and follow that until, well, actually, I don't know if it's specifically gold. It might be any of them for this particular boss. Earlier, to complete your quest, just follow the wisps associated with your particular NPC, so whatever color class you are, just follow those until you encounter the bosses or the enemies that you need. That's pretty much all there is to it. That's why there's like not much to say in terms of a guide. But yeah, I'm not sure about this last one, so we'll see about that. But yeah, it's interesting to note that you can actually potentially at least unlock this quest and encounter an NPC, and that's kind of sometimes the annoying thing. Sometimes it takes a while just to find the NPCs, and you can do that just by resetting zones. Make sure you check for good tinctures and charms. I think even potentially some of the corpses are quite valuable as they give really nice auras, but I haven't checked into the prices of the different corpses yet. But I've been regularly selling tinctures and charms for a few C, even while leveling, so, and some of the later ones will be quite valuable too, so they're definitely worth checking. In terms of my overall opinion for the League, some like kind of like little design issues here that I talked about, and the balance of the empowered mobs are kind of like my bigger concerns, and getting harassed while talking to the NPCs. Those are kind of like my downsides. In terms of reward, I felt like while leveling it was okay, felt balanced, mild, nothing too exciting. I think there's going to be big potential for higher levels of reward at endgame. In fact, I found so there's these various like shrine things you can encounter that gives you different buffs, and one of them gives you 200% rarity and quantity. That was insane. Every monster in the map was just like exploding rares out. Like it was like some 6-man party quantity stacking. 200 quantity is just nuts. So that's going to be insane when you're like juicing maps, when you encounter something like that. Those things are all just effectively random, but generally speaking, like it's going to be at a good value add to any sort of like juicing up your maps strategy. I don't know how much control you can have over it in particular, so there might not be much you can do to like specifically bias how it affects your map, because it is all just kind of random. It's random which monsters get empowered, it's random if they get single or triple empowered, and it's random what shrines you find, and if you find like a big quantity rarity one. The other thing seems to be that unique vendor seems very good, and the drop from the King in the Mists looks insane. It's I believe a unique jewel that gives parts of ascendancies, kind of like how one of the classes does. That looks like a super cool unique. So there's definitely some very good rewards here, and I have to say I love the reward structure of these ascendancies. This is like an extra add to a character. It is very fun, very interesting, and very powerful feeling, very rewarding. So this is a League mechanic that you can't really skip, at least until you get your 8 points. At that point, yeah, you may decide you don't want to do it in maps maybe, or you do want to do it in maps because of the extra rewards. The difficulty is spicy, so I'll leave that up to you, but you definitely want to do it to get your 8 points because that is just like such a nice value add to every character in this league. It's a pretty big deal. And I like it as a reward structure. So the league feels rewarding. I kind of like the design apart from like those specific nitpicks. And if they are actively improving, which they do seem to do, it looks set to become potentially a quite good one. I will just say though, it's becoming a little bit frustrating that it feels like the best time to start the league is 2 weeks later. Hopefully this is a sign that they're getting a bit faster about that, and it might only turn into the best time to start a league is 3 days later. Maybe that won't be so bad. But yeah, my leveling experience with this league mechanic was not good day one. I wouldn't recommend it. Thankfully, it seems to be a lot better already and set to improve even further. So hopefully that is indeed the case. Anyway, that's my rambling thoughts and some things on the league mechanic. Sorry, I don't have more to offer you, but I just haven't learned much more about it that I can really give to you. So, you know, I'll report back if I do discover some more interesting stuff at endgame. There is more interesting stuff in maps, like you can find different things, like I found a harvest encounter and stuff. So there's some fun stuff there, but I don't know if there's really much you can do to control that. So, we'll see. But anyway, folks, that's it for now. I'm Ziggy, and thanks for watching.